This time, I will use the Knight Aberrant from Dragon Quest Monsters as a Pokémon in Ruby. The Knight Aberrant is the boss of the Bazaar Gate in the GBC original Terry's Wonderland, but his position was switched with the Battering Ram in the 3DS remake. Despite being fully armored, he is more of a glass cannon stats-wise, with great attack and wisdom but mediocre defense. As an optional boss, his overall stats are quite high, so I've nerfed all of them by 5 to 10 points when converting to Pokemon base stats. He will have 97 base HP, 123 in attack, 70 in defense, 117 in special attack, 69 in special defense, and 80 in speed, for a total of 556. Since DQM games use lookup tables instead of a fixed formula for calculating stat growth, the rate of which can vary greatly at different levels, the conversion won't be exactly faithful. Also, bigger index numbers don't always mean higher stats. In this case, 12 and 18 are clearly better than 20. Tables 6, 19 and 20 actually grow the second fastest before level 17, but they slow down drastically afterwards. This is highly impractical, if not impossible, to replicate in Pokemon. His level-up moves are based on his Crusader skill set in the 3DS remake, plus the skills he uses as a boss. There's no equivalent of Donk, Frenzy, or Hatchet Man in Pokemon, so Nightshade and Dynamic Punch will have to do. He uses Cosses as a boss, hence Flame Wheel and Heatwave. He also uses Cosnooze and gets the Sleep Break trait, but Dark Void isn't in the game yet, so I gave him Spore instead. All basic solo run rules apply. I'm not using Hidden Power due to its luck-based nature in this generation. I will set up a Knight Aberrant with perfect IVs and pre-applied EVs. He will have a neutral nature, as I can edit the base stats directly if I need to make adjustments. Dark and Steel types seem obvious, given his appearance, although this is a really bad combination in Gen 3 due to the dearth of stab moves. The only offensive Dark-type TM is Thief, and both Steel-type TMs require either wings or a tail. His EVs will be split evenly among defense, special attack, and special defense. His base attack is good enough, and he learns Curse to boost it. Abilities like Cursed Body and Reckless weren't added until later, so I just gave him Hyper Cutter to counter all those intimidators in this game. I put him in the 1.25 million experience group, because the demon family he belongs to levels up slower than most in the original version. I gave him Pursuit and Metal Claw to start with, but those are also the only stab moves he will ever have, since Thief is pointless when most enemies are empty-handed. Fortunately, Roxanne's Gym was an easy win due to both my typing and starting moves. Metal Claw counters rock types, and Pursuit does special damage in this gen. The AI in this game treats moves like Rock Tomb as speed debuff instead of damage-dealing attacks, so it will only use them when you are faster. It also disregards any weaknesses and resistances when picking such moves. The Fighting Gym was already a roadblock, no thanks to my mediocre defense and double weakness to it. I had nothing that could one-shot either of his Pokemon, and one Karate Chop from his Machop did over 60% to me. Metal Claw missing certainly didn't help, but it wouldn't have made any difference to the outcome since it couldn't one-shot. I didn't want to grind, so all I could do was hope for a bulk up or any non-damaging move from either of his Pokemon. I didn't get it from his Machop, but I did get a Sand Attack from his Makuhita, and fortunately, I didn't miss my second Metal Claw. Bulk Up is a strictly better version of Curse without the speed penalty, so I didn't make it compatible. I would also like to preserve the theme of the monster by not giving him too many TM moves. The second rival battle was one that I could have easily lost, because of my double weakness to fighting. I had to start by using Curse against his Wailmer, just so I wouldn't get one-shot by his Combusken. I should have used it a few more times to boost my attack and defense further, but I overestimated my speed, and wrongly assumed that I would still be faster than his Combusken after a single Curse. It turned out that I became slower after just one Curse, and its double kick still did well over half to me. But for some reason, it didn't choose to take me out, and instead used Focus Energy. Watson is usually a tough hurdle to overcome due to his Magneton being resistant to so many types, but having a fire move makes him rather trivial. His Magnemite was of course a one-shot with Flame Wheel, and the crit clearly didn't matter. His Voltorb wasn't, but it chose to blow itself up for 12 damage, when a Sonic Boom would have done 20. As I expected, his Magneton survived a hit, but my berry cured the paralysis from its Thunder Wave. His potion couldn't save it. I made the Shockwave TM compatible, just to give the Knight Aberrant some coverage. A lot of heavy Pokemon like Rhydon and Aggron can learn it, and his suit of armor certainly looks heavy enough. Pursuit only has 40 base power, and the AI almost never switches, so it has outlived its usefulness by now. The first Maxi battle is almost always easy, because his team is just too underleveled for this stage of the game, and his highest level Pokemon, Camerupt, is somehow still using Tackle and Ember. My Hyper Cutter ability makes me immune to Intimidate from his Mightyena, but I'm still susceptible to its Sand Attack. Also, the selection of Steel and Dark-type moves is so narrow and dependent on specific body parts, that Strength is actually my strongest move right now. The Knight Aberrant has no wings or a tail, and he obviously can't bite from behind a helmet. Feint Attack doesn't make sense on an armored brute either. I really wish Night Slash and Flash Cannon were in this game, but sadly, they're not. Flannery could be another major roadblock if they gave her a proper team. Slugma is one of the worst Pokemon ever made in the history of the series, and she's got 2 of them. Magcargo is arguably even worse, but certainly not in this case as my strongest move is Normal type. Anyway, since Overheat effectively loses power with each use, all I had to do was set up Curse on her first Slugma until my strength was able to one-shot her Torkoal. I didn't have to worry about being outsped in this fight, as even at -4 stages, I would still be faster than all of her Pokemon. Strength makes contact, unlike Secret Power, but I didn't have to worry about that either, because neither of her Slugma has the Flame Body ability. They gave them Magma Armor to prevent freezing, at a point where the player doesn't even have access to an Ice type. Well, there is the Ice Beam TM from the game corner, but still. I didn't make the Overheat TM compatible, and it's not a good move in solo runs anyway. Norman wasn't an issue this time, thanks to my resistance to Normal. I equipped a Chesto Berry for Yawn, so I could set up Curse on his first Slacking. Opponents don't have EVs in these games outside the Battle Tower and presumably the Pokemon League, so its Facade only did chip damage to me. Since I'm doubly weak to fighting, his second Slacking would only use Focus Punch, which meant it was basically a free KO as long as I attacked every turn. In fact, I only had to attack on the turns it gets to move, as its Truant ability causes it to skip every second turn. I don't know why they didn't just give his Slackings Hyper Beam. Truant actually overrides or cancels the recharge turn, so you'd think this Pokemon was designed to use moves like Hyper Beam and Giga Impact for trading KOs. It's still a bad strategy though, as it could easily give the replacement a free turn to set up. Facade is a situational move made for PvP and the Battle Tower. It's not that useful outside of TAS, as you wouldn't want to keep an ailment. The Rivals team has lost all semblance of challenge at this point. He still only has 3 Pokemon, none of which are fully evolved, and their levels are lower than some of the wild Pokemon you can find in this area. You'll naturally be overleveled for Winona's gym in a solo run, even if you skip every optional trainer along the way. The biggest threat on her team is Sand Attack on her Skarmory, but I should still be faster than it after 1 Curse, and it has nothing that can really hurt me. I was fishing for an attack boost from Metal Claw, which I didn't get, so I just set up Curse once on her Swellow while it spammed Double Team. That was enough for me to one-shot both her Altaria and Pelipper with Strength, while Heatwave took care of her Skarmory. Aerial Ace is based on a sword technique from Japanese folklore, called Swallow Return, which is why all bird Pokemon and those with sharp claws can learn it. The Knight Aberrant is holding an axe, so I made it compatible. Here is the final rival battle in these games, and he still doesn't have a full team or even a fully evolved starter. Sure, they gave him more of a support role than that of a rival like Green and Silver, but they could still have given him a full team to show off some of the rare new Pokemon in this gen. Like Wailord, Breloom, Crawdaunt, and Swalot. By the way, you can get a free Shadow Ball TM inside the tower at Mount Pyre. This will be useful later. I need a second Pokemon to fight the Psychic Gym, so I just grabbed my HM Mule. This battle would be a cakewalk even if it was 1 against 2, because I'm immune to Psychic. Their Solrock does have Sunny Day and Flamethrower, but it's not a fire type, and its special attack is dreadful. I equipped a Chesto Berry just in case their Lunatone put me to sleep with hypnosis. The Solrock's Flamethrower didn't even do a quarter, and my Metal Claw after a curse easily took it out in one hit. I don't think the Lunatone has anything that can hit dark types at all, as I know it doesn't have Ice Beam, and Moonblast wasn't added until Gen 6. Calm Mind doesn't make sense on a Cursed Knight, so the TM is useless to me. A Persim Berry is mandatory for the second Maxi battle, as both his Mightyena and Crobat can inflict confusion. Also, I got rid of Strength so I wouldn't be stuck with it, but I chose to forego Double Edge because I don't get Stab, and my HP isn't high enough to soak up the recoil damage. I set up Curse on his Mightyena and fished for a free attack boost from Swagger, which I was able to get. His Camerupt didn't use Eruption or whatever fire move it had, but it wouldn't be able to one-shot me anyway, at least not without any special attack EVs. This is where they hid the TM for return in these games. Its max power is roughly halfway between Strength and Double Edge, but it has no recoil damage, and it's replaceable anytime. As the last gym leader, Wallace is really no challenge at all, mostly because he opens with a useless Love Disc that can't do any meaningful damage. I could just equip a Persim Berry, set up on it until I get confused, and then proceed to sweep his team. Well, I did get confused on the first turn and then hit by Attract, but it could only do chip damage with its Water Pulse. Plus one stage wasn't enough to one-shot his Whiscash, so I just used Curse again on it. I didn't care about being slower, since neither his Celio nor Sea King could do much damage, and his Milotic wouldn't be able to one-shot me even with a critical hit. They should have given him something like a Gyarados with Thunder Wave, Dragon Dance, and Earthquake as the lead, just to prevent easy setups. Anyway, I obviously can't use the Water Pulse TM, and it came way too late to be useful. The Wally battle at the end of Victory Road can go south quickly, as all of his Pokémon can inflict status ailments, like Paralysis, Sleep, Confusion, and Leech Seed. His team aren't particularly high level, so return after one curse should be able to one-shot everything except the Magneton, for which I have Heatwave. Delcatty is the worst evolved Pokémon in the game, and while his Gardevoir was annoying with its double team spam, I don't think it has a move that can hit dark types. Future Sight ignores weaknesses and resistances in this gen, but I don't know if it bypasses immunities as well, and I don't think so. I got seeded by his Rosalia, but it was his last Pokémon. Not sure why he didn't send it out sooner. Here are my stats and moves for the Pokémon League. None of my stats are exactly bad due to my EV spread, but I don't have any powerful stab moves either. As I mentioned earlier, Dark and Steel really isn't a good combination in this gen. I equipped a Persim Berry and learned Aerial Ace for Sydney. He has 2 grass types, and I'd rather not deal with accuracy drops from Sand Attack. His Mightyena couldn't really hurt me, so I just set up Curse on it. Aerial Ace one-shot his Sharpedo, Shiftry, and Cacturne. I never knew Needle Arm could stun. Well, it was exclusive to Cacturne, and it was rare for you to be slower than it. His Absol doesn't have superpower in this version, so it couldn't do much either. Like always, Phoebe was where the problem arose. Her lead Dusclops has the ghost version of Curse, which means instant GG as it's undispellable and I have no way to heal myself. I know it has no special defense EVs, but Shadow Ball is physical in this game, and I have no attack EVs either. As I thought, Shadow Ball without stab or EVs didn't even come close to one-shotting it. I would have to either fish for a crit, or do the entirety of the Trick House to get the TM for Taunt. I really couldn't be bothered to do the latter, so I decided to just try again and hope for a crit, or a different move from the Dusclops. Sydney was basically a free win, due to the poor selection of moves on his team. Then I remembered that I could learn Spore at level 60, so instead of wasting time hoping to get lucky, I just used a few rare candies to learn it. Cosnooze with the Sleep Break trait has about 80% success rate on all enemies without resistance, which is equivalent to Dark Void, but unfortunately, it wasn't added until the next gen. However, even with Spore, there's still a 1 in 5 chance that the enemy wakes up immediately on its next turn. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened this time. Well, I just need a 2-turn sleep to set up my own version of Curse, for which there's an 80% chance. I got another 1-turn sleep this time. Maybe sleep turns aren't uniformly distributed, but weighted towards the lower numbers, just like those multi-hit moves. It didn't matter though, since it used Shadow Punch instead of Curse. The rest of her team was no threat. Her Sableye could get annoying with Attract, but it has nothing that can do more than chip damage. Her second Banette was faster than the first, suggesting that they have different IVs and EVs, and perhaps natures as well. I equipped an Aspear Berry for Glacia, who is usually the worst member of the league, due to the small number of ice types in Gen 3. I put her lead Glalie to sleep and set up Curse on it. Two stages of attack were enough to one-shot her Glalie in first Celio, but her second one probably has defense EVs. It survived a Shadow Ball and used Attract, which stopped me from moving for 5 turns in a row. The odds of that happening are only about 3%, assuming the RNG is actually random. But these games use a pseudo-RNG based on a seed, which basically means that all kinds of BS can be made to happen with certainty, given the right seed, and it's also why TAS is possible. I skipped the first 2 fights to save some time. I equipped a Citrus Berry this time, and I decided to take out her first Glalie straight away to avoid an Ice Beam freeze. I set up on her Celio instead, and just played it safe by putting everything to sleep first. Anyway, she wasn't hard to beat if I didn't get too unlucky with the RNG. I equipped another Citrus Berry for Drake, as 2 of his Pokémon no Flamethrower. I had to set up all the way on his Shelgon in order to avoid Earthquake from his Flygons, which would do much more than non-stab Flamethrower. Its Dragon Claw and Rock Tomb did almost nothing, and I didn't care about speed anyway. No idea why his first Flygon used Sandstorm when I was immune to it, and none of his other Pokémon had Sand Veil either. But Sand Attack on his second one almost cost me the match. I missed once against his Salamence, and I only had 16 HP remaining when I took it out. I miraculously survived a Dragon Breath from his Altaria with 3 HP, and my Shadow Ball didn't miss. It clearly doesn't have any special attack EVs, and it could even have a minus special attack nature. I learned Earthquake for Steven, but I thought I had to replace Spore instead of Shadow Ball because of the Levitate ability on his Claydol. I should have replaced Heatwave, because I'm immune to Toxic, and the AI never switches as long as its current Pokémon has a move that can do damage. In fact, that wasn't my only silly misplay in this battle. Even without Spore, I could have easily set up Curse all the way on his Skarmory, since all it could do was chip damage with Steel Wing or Aerial Ace. With max defense, 3 earthquakes from his Claydol, Aberrant, and Metagross shouldn't be able to take me out without a critical, but I would easily be able to one-shot them in return. The only potential issue with that was I could get confused by his Armaldo and Cradily, but it would still have happened after only one curse anyway, because I couldn't one-shot either of them. As you can see, here's the problem with only using curse once. I was still slower than his Metagross, but I had neither enough attack to one-shot it, nor enough defense to survive a second earthquake. I tried to fish for a crit while he used potions instead of attacking me, but I never got it. I tried again a few times, but I couldn't even get back to Steven, due to bad sleep rolls at Phoebe, crits and freezes at Glacia, and misses at Drake. To not waste any more time, I've cut out all those failed attempts and used all my rare candies to hit level 65. Sydney was obviously an easy win, and Phoebe also became an easy win as my Shadow Ball was now a one-shot on her cursing Dusclops. Her second one still wasn't, but it couldn't do much. I learned Earthquake for Glacia this time, so I didn't need to set up Curse. Heatwave one-shot both Glalis, and Earthquake took care of her seals in 2 or 3 hits each. I did still have to set up Curse on Drake's Shelgon, because Stab Earthquake from his Flygons would still hurt, but so would Flamethrower. And even at this level, I was barely able to win against him. Steven shouldn't be a problem this time, although I should still have set up a few more curses on his Skarmory, just to be safe. Well, they say that hindsight is 20/20 for a good reason. Anyway, I now took noticeably less damage from his earthquakes, and most of all, Heatwave was a one-shot on the Metagross. Maybe I should have used my own earthquake to not risk a miss, but again, hindsight. In conclusion, the Knight Aberrant is an unfortunate victim of the shallow selection of Dark and Steel-type moves in Gen 3, as well as the lack of physical and special split. He could have done so much better if moves like Night Slash and Flash Cannon were in the game, although Night Slash would still be special here, due to the way Gen 3 moves were coded. If he had a physical Night Slash, paired with Curse, he would certainly be able to cleave through enemies with impunity in this game. This video also turned out to be longer than I expected, but thanks for watching.